want to introduce Joyce Doyle, has submitted a young adult story, so we're really glad to have her here with us. And you're from, did you tell us you're from Maine?
I did, yes.
That's really great.
I cheated, I have family in Massachusetts, I grew up in Westwood, so.
It's
not as great as it sounds.
Oh, good. So thanks for coming today. So, I guess that's not an official start, but so, hi everyone and welcome to this episode of Writers Infusion. I'm your host, Susan. I am here with Ed, who's off screen right now, but we're live at the Cambridge Library, and that's why he's off screen. He's doing something for us. Jen's right here. Literary agent Anne Collette is our special guest today, so we're very glad to have her here to help us out. Joyce Doyle is our guest author today, and we've got Julie and Dave, who you're all familiar with. So we're going to get started. This is a young adult excerpt called Taboo. I am going to read the summary, and then Joyce is going to read her excerpt. And again, these pages are extracted from the middle of the story, it's not the beginning. So the summary is, bullying is bad, and Harker's Cove teens are ready to do something about it. Their anti-bullying club is popular. So popular, if you're not a member, you're an outcast. 5 teens, the believer, the rebel, the disillusioned, the faker, and the follower, discover their own power to stand up.
Fran. The hallway of students dressed in blue and tan is just freaky. Fran tugs at her own shirt. She showed up late to the market last weekend and was faced with a choice between extra large and boat sale large. It's practically a prairie dress. She's been wearing t-shirts underneath all week, so when she bends over setting up her camera, she doesn't give the entire male population of Parker's Cove a free show. Not that she has that much to show off. Plus, there's too much material to tuck in, and she's already been written up for tying her tails into a knot to keep them from swinging around her hips. She sighs. The whole week has been surreal. Monday morning rolled around, and while the elementary grades dutifully wore their new uniforms, only about half of the upper grade students did. They must have thought it was a practical joke, that it wasn't going to be enforced. They were pulled aside as they walked up to the school and forced to stand outside, even though the fog had rolled back in and it was raw feeling. Anyone in the uniform that tried to stop and talk to a non-uniform student was sent inside right away. It was strange seeing Senorita Soprano as an enforcer. Fran had her in Spanish class last year and remembers her as a total pushover who cared more about the students liking her than learning the language. First bell rang and the students who were pulled aside were still standing, all lined up outside the building. Traveling from class to class, everyone looked out the windows to see what was happening. Nothing was happening. They were just standing there all morning. Teachers took shifts monitoring them. At first, the students in the school were told to stop staring out the window and focus on their classes. But eventually, even the teachers gave up on the idea of holding a real class and joined everyone watching the non-uniform students standing outside. Fran even filmed a little bit on her phone, but it doesn't make exciting footage to see students lined up, standing still. Some wore backpacks, but others were unfortunate enough to have carried their books loose, and they had to hold them in their arms the entire time. They were marched inside at lunch and seated at 2 tables, pulled into a back corner away from the rest. Then it was right back outside again until the last bell when Principal Woods appeared for the first time that day and handed them all blue shirts. They were released. The rest of the week, everybody wore their uniforms. Several don't fit well like Fran's, and almost everyone has to wash it each night since they only have the one set. It's strange enough to have to adjust to that, but it isn't even the only change at the school. Students aren't allowed to talk between classes, a time traditionally reserved for socializing, gossiping, and getting out some energy before sitting still for another 50-minute period. Instead, they were supposed to walk, not run, to their lockers, collect the necessary books, and walk to their next classes, silently. The first day, the silence wasn't enforced either because the teachers were distracted playing jailer outside and didn't have the manpower to monitor the halls, or because they wanted the students to talk about what was happening to the non-uniformed students. Either way, that first day, they were allowed to behave normally, although nobody really did. But now, silence is enforced. No more shouts, slamming lockers, thumping feet. No more jostling shoulders, no more greeting friends. Fran walks through the hallway in a sea of blue, and all she hears are the soft shuffle of shoes on the tile flooring. When she passes Max, she smiles and waves. He nods back at her. Corey. Corey watches the hallway filled with students, a sea of shifting blues swirling together and apart before editing in a new location downstream, a tide relentless in its pull back into the classrooms. He likes the uniformity, the sameness they all have. He tugs on the sleeve of his own blue shirt, which his mother pressed to clear of wrinkles for him just this morning. He starts his unconscious routine. Tug the sleeves, straighten the collar, check the tuck, center the belt, smooth the pant, confirm the shoelaces are tucked. He finishes with a quick pat to his hair. He thinks his new cut is more in keeping with the uniform. Instead of wearing it nearly chin length, ignored most of the time despite it hanging limply in his face, he cropped it. He walked into the barber shop, which was really just a converted garage off the side of Dan Higgins' house, and announced he wanted it shaved. Dan's jaw dropped. Corey knew the old man had been wanting to cut his mop for years. Dan practically bounced to the chair, swung a cape over Corey's chest with a flourish worthy of a bullfighter, and went to work. A quarter-inch around the sides and back, Dan called it a number 2. Then he took the scissors to the top and front, leaving it slightly longer, but still well above Corey's eyebrows. Corey feels a lot lighter now, breezier, present. He runs his hand up the back of his head where the tiny bristle scratches his palm. The halls are clearing out, just a few stragglers left delaying the inevitable. They moved smoothly, quietly. Corey is one of the newly assigned official hall monitors. He has a lot of experience watching the halls. He knows the patterns, who will try to ditch, who will cause a stir. Mr. Baker steps out into the hall and sees Corey standing at the end. Corey nods and Mr. Baker frowns, but doesn't tell Corey to get to class before re-entering his classroom and shutting the door behind him. Corey can't help smiling. It's okay. No one is around now to see.
Would you like to go first?
I don't know from the right one to go first. All right, speaking as an agent, when you submit something to an agent, you always want to make sure that that's the category they represent. And I don't represent YA or MG. That's the bad news. The good news is when the voice is really strong and jumps out at you and grabs you, that's very telling. I thought your synopsis here, their anti-bullying club is popular. So popular, if you're not a member, you're an outcast. I love the idea of that. Of everything created to do something good has now become something bad, right? I thought, I have hardly any markings on this. I thought your prose was very good. Let's pretend we didn't talk before the camera started rolling. And I told her that, I asked her about her experience with alternating points of view, because that's very hot right now. Characters, it's not chapters anymore, it's from the character's point of view. I thought she used it well. I had a couple of comments, and they're all really small because I thought your language was smooth, and that's why when you were reading it, I stopped reading along and just concentrated to see if the voice would still jump out at me. And I think this is really promising, and I'm going to do it on camera. I'm going to give you my card. Yeah.
Wow. My goodness. That's so exciting. You can totally dance. You should dance.
Because as I told her, I don't rep YA, but I had read some YA stuff at another conference I went to, and the voice jumped out at me, grabbed me, and I went on to sell 2 books in the series, right? So I'm trusting my gut here and saying that when you're finished, I'm going to want to see it, you know? And if I run into any problems, we have a YA agent at our agency, we could do it together. But I don't know what the others are going to say. You know, what's the bottom line here? Who's the agent?
That's right. That's right. When the agent says, "Are you willing to change this?" your answer is always absolutely.
Yes, now, this does not mean you won't get. So, I mean, based on what I heard in the first round, there was some excellent criticism here, and there's always room for improvement as we talk. One other thing I would like to say, and I say it all the time. The person who says to me, "Oh my God, it's so great! You're gonna love it." When it's finished, the ending is going to move you. It's so beautiful. I know, excuse me, I'm going to do it on camera. I know that book will suck. But when I talked to her and she said, "I'm not sure, I'm still working on it," that's what you want to hear. You never find a writer whose book has been published say to you, "It's perfect, I wouldn't change a word." They all say, "Oh, I wish I could change this, I wish I could change that." So that's what you actually want to see. So as far as I'm concerned, this is very promising.
Yeah.
Can I get to the running man for Joyce? Can I dance for you? You're gonna dance.
I want to add on to that too. You know, we received a lot of submissions just for this event today, and this one really jumped at me. This was my first. I definitely want to do this one, and I think the writing's really good, the voice is really good. I think the story's really unusual, and I like the whole idea of it. That I'm thinking about maybe this is why the halls are quiet, because now they're trying to find a way to deal with bullying. I just find the whole thing fascinating. I thought the voice, like I said, the voice was good. And in terms of my comments, the second page was the one page I marked up. I just gave some suggestions on how I thought it could be worded better. There were a couple things about, I don't know, just how it was, just a couple of questions I had on here, but nothing major. And I was so interested in it, and I know this is not the same as Anne saying this or giving you her card, but I would love to read it when it's finished and, you know, take a shot at editing it for you. That would be really interesting.
Oh, I thought she was going to say buy it.
Well, that too. And we want autographed copies. We expect autographs.
You guys will, definitely.
So, that's where I'm coming from, and then if I had any other, the only other thing I noticed, and I kind of wanted to bring this up to the team, because sometimes when I see this, I'm not sure if it should be fixed or not because of the voice, but the tense moved around a lot.
Yeah.
And so wherever I saw that, I fixed it.
Yeah.
So it's just something that can happen, and some of these things too, that when you know that you might mess up on a tense, or you might use a word too much like just, which is one of mine, you don't want that to interrupt your flow when you're writing. That's something that you take care of later. So if you say just too much, or the tense thing, that's something that you can look back on, and that, you know, someone else like us can help you with. And then you'll learn more the more you do it. So, great job.
Do you have a writing school book on Maine that you made?
I do. We don't critique each other. We're more of a support. What are you doing lately? Type of group. We set goals for each other.
I'd like to point out some phrasing that I loved. So with Corey, when he's watching the hallways, you have a sea of shifting blue swirling together and apart before ending in a new location downstream, a tide relentless in its pullback into the classrooms. I loved that. I mean, the visual was just beautiful. And then when he's getting his hair cut, and the barber swung a cape over Corey's chest with a flourish worthy of a bullfighter. I loved that wording. And you know, like we had said in the previous, there's a couple places where, you know, and again, I'll just point to Sue's blog about certain words that you don't need. So you don't have to say Corey watches the hallway filled with students, just the hallway filled with students. Corey knew the old man had been wanting. The old man had been wanting. So, and these are just technical things. Like I really had to reach to find something critical, critical in this. And I do. I love the premise of how, because I think you probably see this every day in the world, is where you're so against something that sometimes you become exactly what you hate something so much that you eventually become what you hate. And I think that premise will resonate with young adults and adults, I think.
I love the bullfighter reference. I too like Sea of Blue, and you liked it so much you used it twice.
I realized that while I was reading it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to choose one place, but
Yeah.
it is a
Yeah.
beautiful phrase. And while I'm there, Fran ends with, when she passes Max, she smiles and waves, he nods back. And I thought maybe you ought to put Mac here, to shift from her position. If he's one of the kids in
He
the
is,
group,
yeah.
instead of going to Corey, or not mention Mac, mention leaving to Corey.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
your call. But if I could speak as a middle school teacher and knowledge with high school teachers, I'm surprised Fran takes photographs or films a little bit of it, but in this age of cell phones, no one else is filming to send to a friend who's homesick, to send to a parent, to send to the newspaper, send to the news station perhaps.
I'm surprised actually they have their phones.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think those are taken.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with technology because it changes so much that by the time your book gets published, and who knows that I say when it gets published, not
Yes.
you know, that technology could be,
3D photos.
you know, so you just have to be careful when you're referencing technology.
And just a few details, the kids were walked into the cafeteria. Did they get to eat? Did they get bathroom breaks? Did they give them water? I know they're standing outside. And while they're outside, are there cars passing by? Does anyone in the outside world notice? Is there a courtyard?
That's a very important.
Thank you, I'm trying to mention. But it's a leap year, right?
I made a point that when they're walking from classroom, and every single school I've ever been in, when they're walking from one classroom to the next, they're in a corridor, so they can't see
there is
outside.
something
So I was wondering how they
gorgeous.
could see, but you might have described it, this is the middle, maybe this is a different kind of a school and they can see that. Okay.
And earlier it's mentioned the reason for the uniforms, I assume,
Yes.
and who insisted, it's
Yes.
administration, it's parents.
Yes, from the
I
principals.
definitely want to read it.
Very curious about that. And Fran's job, she's setting up a camera. Is she in a studio? I'm curious about that. What she's up to.
She films for the school needs.
Ah, how about that? Well, here's the story for her.
Yeah.
And I thought, speaking of Fran, she has this very just t-shirt. How did she feel putting that on? What would she rather be wearing? I can have her imagine what's in her closet, or I'd rather be in my favorite pink sweater, whatever it is. Have Fran give us contrast. And I like it.
Dave.
I have very little. I mean, people who see my pages it's usually a sea of blue. And,
Comments, lots of comments.
Another
lots of
sea of
comments.
We call him Comma Man.
So the fact that there were very few comments mean this is so clean and well written. And I was just struck by the strangeness of the situation. I mean, the kids who don't have uniforms are like being shamed, and it's such an odd kind of thing. And then this kid who seems like a real nonconformist, Corey, is getting a haircut in this situation. And it's like I don't know. It's like mirror world. It's like bizarre world. It's a very strange
I
situation.
thought that was interesting. I
Yeah.
thought that too.
And two
Very
different
strange
responses
situation.
to the same situation.
Yeah, that you've set up here. And I think it's very clever. It's very well done to bring us into this, and also have us see like, wow, this is odd that things are going on this way. So kudos to you. Terrific.
Okay, here it comes.
Jay's gonna disagree with everybody.
Brace yourself.
I'm a retired teacher, and the thought that this framework would be embraced by school officials is so counter to anything that I've ever seen. I can see kids bullying each other, and that happens all the time. But it's under the radar. To have teachers enforcing it is something that I just can't buy. It's tough for me to handle. Have you read? It's a book called The Wave.
I watched
Okay, and it's very similar. It deals with Nazism, and a teacher is trying to show the kids what it's like to be in a Nazi type situation. And of course, it's a very powerful story, but the point is well made. But it was not supported by the school, it was the kids who were doing it. To have an administration actually backing it up, to have corporal punishment, having kids stand outside in the street for an entire school day, I'm saying to myself, no, this can't be. It may be over the top, I think. I don't know if YA kids will appreciate it, or maybe they'll like it. I don't know, because I'm not a YA person anyway. But just, yes, they will like it.
I think that because I read a lot of, I write middle grade, so I read a lot of middle grade and young adult, and I could see this as almost pseudo-dystopian, futuristic.
Yes, I watched it.
Where, so if you think of, a lot of the books where the adults are behaving badly, and it's because of this transition from, it used to be like this, and that was bad, and it's kind of talking about our current day, and so we need to change it, and it turns into this really horrible situation where, the Hunger Games is like that. We used to be like this, and now this is so much better, and it's the adults behaving badly. So you do see that a lot. Now, whether or not in 2 years that's going to be out of style or not, I don't know, but it is still very,
Well,
very
it's style one thing, but believable. From
Well,
my
you know
point of
what?
view, I
Bullying
can't.
is so big now, and
I understand that, and doing something against it is very big. But to have a militant adherence to uniforms and conduct supported by an administration is, to me, off the top.
Okay, first of all, this is going to be great for book clubs, because you can see what's going on. But I don't know. I don't know. We could talk about this all day. But
right.
I see it just as we were saying, the Hunger Games. We could go anywhere, and right now people are trying to switch how they're approaching the schools by trying to teach the kids about anti-bullying, which I will say on camera I think is BS, because there are a lot of reasons for a lot of the bullying, and a lot of it doesn't start with the kids. But maybe it just means
Well, let's not get political here.
right.
Not get political. Don't
Okay,
get me
but what I'm
going.
saying is, you can get to a point where the administration doesn't know what else to do. I mean, I think it's plausible. And even if it's not plausible, like the Hunger Games might, hopefully is not plausible.
Ugh.
But it's still, I think it's still a good story.
Oh, the writing is excellent.
Yes.
And it just, one discussion on the writing is, visually, it's right on. All the characters that you name here are cameras, though. They are recording what's going on. They're not feeling anything that's going on. Do they like what they're doing? How does a kid feel when he gets his haircut? It says what his haircut is, but how does he feel now that he looks like, who knows? I think you need to get deeper into the characters' emotions as opposed to simply very clearly describing what's going on, but why it's going on and how they feel about it. And I think they have to be, it can't be all one way. You have to have some kids say, hey, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is not the way life is supposed to be. And they rebel against the common thought.
But I think the seed of that is in there, in what we read.
It may be,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen it.
I also have to ask you a question. It's been a while since I've been in Catholic school, like 10 years or something. But
My kids are,
this could be a Catholic school.
I understand, and I
Uniforms
mentioned that in my,
outside, you know?
yeah, my comment was, it's illegal in public school. It may not be in a private school.
Okay.
And that's but this is, I'm assuming, a public school.
Yeah, but, well, whatever.
yeah, but I think my kids do go to Catholic school, so they do wear the uniforms, but, it's the part of making the children stand outside in the cold that's so abusive, and that's the part that, I think Dave is reacting to. Like, that would never happen, like, those teachers would all be, in jail. But I think if you can kind of write about extreme situations to bring out something that is a reality, and making it extreme, like the Hunger Games or like something like this, is very prominent in children's life.
Yeah, this is a larger story than what we're reading here.
Yeah.
This is a story for society as opposed to one specific school.
Yeah.
If you had newspaper reports on this school, and it was good or bad, then you're bringing it outside the walls of the school, and now you're introducing it to a society. And that's a greater, that's a bigger story than what you've got here. I think you wanted to limit it to this high school. Because you're gonna lose control of the story.
Yeah, they're on an island community so that they don't have neighbors to interfere. I know, Martin.
I know a dad that could,
because I wanted to isolate them.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. Because you set some boundaries. If it were in Newton or Wellesley or someplace, then you'd have an awful lot to deal with. But if it's an island,
That's a
then,
good idea.
yeah.
I want to meet the other members of this club. I'm very curious about that. And I'm wondering what part of the school year this is. You already mentioned this week you would change, but when? I'm sure it's mentioned in the other school.
Yeah, it's around, we're in November, so.
So there's been enough time in
But
school.
they
there's
have a
something
new
to happen.
principal.
And how far is this into the story?
This is just past the setup part, so this is kind of the beginning of the major conflict. Everyone's responding.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
No, I just thought it was really interesting. I mean, you have this terrific scene with, the kids outside, and the reaction of people is just to watch. It's just, I don't know, it just says something.
Well, isn't that just, it's there but for the grace of God, watch that, thank goodness I wasn't.
But that's what people.
But taken from the other point of view, those kids had some cojones to stay out there and not go along.
Yeah.
So you have, and somebody has to say that in the book. You have to respect those kids for standing up and saying no to this.
But they changed the next day,
Well,
right?
well,
Next day,
and
they all
what-
You're right,
that's
a kid
right.
would think that, a kid would probably
Yeah, they're
think,
scared
well,
to
they're
go.
too scared to do it, but that's kind of.
But in the summary, I love that, 5 teens, the believer, the rebel, the disillusioned, the faker, and follower. So I'm assuming that the rebel is going to, maybe be the Katniss. And I suspect that Corey is the believer. Like, he's all into this, and Fran is kind of, I don't really like it, but I'm not going to make any waves. She's the follower, maybe. And so the other 3, I'd like to see the other 3. So
I love that.
great premise.
Nice, great.
Interesting story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
You must be glad you submitted.
I am delighted.
So
Was it
thank
worth
you.
the trip?
That's
Totally.
fine. Thanks for coming.
Thank
We're really glad to read this, and I mean it. If you're interested, I'd love to read the whole thing when you're
Yeah, that'd be great.
Take a look at it. And that's the thing too about editing that I'll bring up here too, that we all make our suggestions, but then you have to decide what's right and what's wrong. And what needs to come out, right, that's right. You still have to be true to yourself no matter what, so.
And unless the agent asks you to do it.
We don't agree on that.
No, let me tell you, I give notes to my authors all the time, and I like the one who say, well, you know, my character simply wouldn't do that. So I don't want you to do 100% everything I said if you have a legitimate reason for it. So, and then guess what, after I finish with it, and if I sell it to an editor, she's gonna come along with a long list of notes, you know? Things you didn't even notice, things I didn't even notice.
So how do you spell grovel?
No.
That's essential.
We never agree on this. I don't think there should be groveling, but. Okay, so on that note, thank you again for coming, and thank you everyone for joining us today on this episode of Writers Infusion. We'll see you next time. Keep